welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new around here, then my name is Katie. I'm a mixed media artist, and today I'm going to be flipping through the first half of my most recent sketchbook. So this is a Royal Talens art creation sketchbook. This is the 13 by 21 centimeter size, and it's generally the one I go to, but it's taken me a little bit longer to fill it so far this year, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about that and why I split these into two halves. But I hope you find this video inspiring. Hopefully it gives you some ideas to fill your own sketchbooks, and I'm excited to show you the pages so far. So I am exactly halfway through this sketchbook. Usually I'm a little bit further on before I film a tour, but as I mentioned at the beginning, this has taken me a little while longer than usual to fill. I also split it into two halves, so all my sketchbook tours on my channel, and I will leave a playlist link down below and up in the cards. Generally, because these are such thick sketchbooks, it would be a really long video to do the whole thing, so that's why I split it into half, and they're generally about half an hour long. Now, usually I do fill these quite quickly, but this one has taken me around 6 months, so I remember starting this one on the 1st of January 2024, and I'm just about halfway through. We're roughly 6 months through the year now. So usually I fill these a little bit quicker, but the reason why I haven't so far this year is just because I'm using a lot more sketchbooks. So I'm still creating pretty much every day, but I'm using different sketchbooks, I'm working on different projects and keeping them separate. So I am reaching for this a little less than I used to. I've started using watercolour a lot more, and I find that other papers and stock in other sketchbooks are much better than this one for using such wet mediums. I've also been testing out different formats and different sizes, so this one has just been less reached for, I suppose, compared to previous years, but I still love it. I still really enjoy this sketchbook. I've talked a lot about it on my channel and shared some of my other sketchbooks if you're interested in a recent video, so again, I'll link that up in the cards. So before I start this video, I did want to caveat that it's okay if it takes you a long time to fill your sketchbook. I know it's really easy to compare on social media and seeing artists on YouTube who fill their sketchbooks within a week or a month. And I just want to say that it's okay if it takes you 6 months or a year or even 10 years to fill your sketchbook. As long as you're creating and you're enjoying what you do, it doesn't matter how long things take. Artists aren't defined by how many sketchbooks they fill or how quickly they fill it. So I do just want to say that, and that it's okay if you never finish a sketchbook as well. But hopefully this will give you some inspiration. My sketchbook is quite a finished sketchbook. I generally do fill it with quite finished and purposeful art. I do have another sketchbook, a second one, which is also a Royal Talens 13 by 21 centimeter. So just like this, but it's got a lot more swatches, a lot more doodles, and really quick, scrappy drawings. So although there is going to be a lot of art in here that is very finished and to a higher quality, just know that some of my sketchbooks don't look like this. So another caveat just to say that your sketchbook might look very different to mine, and that's okay. I generally don't share my other one online, so I just wanted to mention that before we start because I have heard that quite a lot in sketchbook tours. But without further ado, I'm really excited to show you, so let's get cracking. Okay, this is the very first spread that I did on the 1st of January 2024. When I filmed this, and it is on my YouTube channel because I did have a bit of the fear of starting this sketchbook. Again, I'll link that up above and down below in the description. I think there's going to be a lot of links because there is going to be a lot of pieces in here that I have filmed for YouTube. But when I filmed this, I wasn't sure on it. I was a little bit harsh on myself, which is a running theme, but it's definitely grown on me. I really love the colours and the vibrancy and the richness. I really like this turquoise, and yeah, I'm not sure why I was being so mean to myself because I think the colours here are nice, and I really enjoyed adding this pop of purple. Purple isn't something I use often in my work, so it was nice to do that. And this gives me a really nice feeling now. I think having that space really helps, so if you do find that you don't like something you've created, coming back to it a little bit further down the line can give you a really good distance from it and see it for what it is rather than what you'd hoped it would be. So this one was created with gouache and Neocolors as well as some coloured pencils. And then I started on January 1st my 30-day drawing challenge. Again, there's a video recapping this, but it meant I got off to a flying start in this sketchbook for the first month of the year because I just stayed in this sketchbook for the whole of January. So this was on the 2nd, this was on the 3rd. This was referenced from an image that Emma Carlisle shared on her Patreon, and this was from references that I shared on my Patreon of some old toy catalogues, which were really fun to draw. Very different for me, but I really enjoyed this and I love the bright colours. Then I did some birds for the Birdfest challenge, which runs in January. So this was on the 4th, and I took a few of the different prompts and just filled the whole page with different birds. This was done with brush pens and then outlined with coloured pencil. So on my Patreon in January, we did line month, and so I was testing out using line more. I don't normally outline my art or my subjects, so this was a really interesting month for me to try and push out my comfort zone. Then we've got this one which I really like. So I did use watercolour here, but I was quite careful to not water it down too much. I am so happy with this spread. It is quite busy, but I love the vibes. I really enjoy drawing houses and that typical countryside vibe. So this was done again with line first. So I put down all of my line work and then I added the colour on top. Whereas usually I would put down my shape and colour first and then add my lines. So it was a really interesting way of working. Then on the 6th of January, I just did these studies of these oast houses. I just found some images online and I just wanted to draw them. I used my acrylic markers. I remember I didn't have a huge amount of time, so it was a really nice, quick way to put down a lot of this colour and then add my lines on top. I also enjoyed doing this. This is obviously very different, but it was nice to just sort of copy an illustration about the architecture of that style building. And yeah, I enjoyed that one. It's a bit different for me. Then on the 7th and the 8th, again, you can really see where I'm exploring lines here. This is very different for me because I usually go in with my colours first. But it was fun to play around, and I'm always a really big advocate for testing out new things and seeing how it affects your style. This was done on a Morten Hilmer live stream, so on his channel, which I'll try and link everything I mentioned down below. He has a live stream on 24/7 of this really peaceful little stream, and there's lots of wildlife that come visit, foxes, badgers, birds, and it was very snowy, obviously, in January, so I wanted to test out using limited colours, so just the 3 here, the white, the dark indigo, and the lighter green, and I really like these. I had a lot of fun drawing the trees and, again, playing with line. This one's very different. As you can see, my style does change, and I think that's okay. I'm really happy to just go with the flow with my sketchbook and just draw how I want to draw. So I don't feel hemmed in by my style, and it does change a lot. And perhaps that's not always great for things like the algorithm, but I find it helps me keep momentum with my art practice. So I'm totally okay that this sketchbook feels full of different styles. But this one I did the line work first, again with an ink pen, so really harsh black lines compared to what I usually do, and then I coloured it in. I think this one's just really fun. I enjoyed researching about the king penguin. This was one of the prompts for Birdfest again, so that's where I got the idea, and I really enjoy adding in little notes into my sketchbook. Some quick ones here from the 10th and the 11th. This was done from a photo that I took. I used gouache here. I really love the wildness of this one. I remember this didn't take too long. And I put down my colour first, and then I added on this really contrasted heavy line work on top for the tree, which completely changed it, but I really enjoyed doing that. And then just a quick one for day 11, which was using like a felt tip pen for the lines. So I had done a live stream on my Patreon playing around with that sort of line work thing. And I don't love this bird. It's a bit messy and dirty, but it was a daily challenge, so you're not going to love every single piece you do. This one I did enjoy a lot. So I did this on the 12th and this one on the 13th. Again, playing around with colour and line. So this one I put down my block colours first. There's a whole video on my Patreon about this sort of style and testing it out on a drawing session we did. But I'm really happy with this. This was referenced from photos from my parents' beautiful garden, some gorgeous alliums, and just so much colour. So this is brush pens first and then coloured pencils on top. Just a really nice fun spread in my sketchbook. I really loved adding on all the different patterns. This one didn't work as well, but it's still a good experiment, and that's what sketchbooks are for. So I put down a huge heap of gouache first, very wild, and also using colours I don't often use, specifically this red. And like I said, I don't think this one works, but it was nice to play around with putting down a big block of colour and really scribbling with my brush, and then coming in on top with more scribbles with my coloured pencils. just a spread filled with my materials, so just drawing what was around me on my desk. I did the outlines first, so with a dark indigo pencil, and then came in with brush pens and Neocolors on top. I also did this study from Omar Wynn's Patreon, so she had drawn some oranges and I was really inspired by her use of Faber-Castell gelatos. So I grabbed mine and created these very textured oranges, and I also paired that with a bit of Posca and wetting the gelatos as well. So there's a mixture of quite harsh, rough textures and then the watery ones, which I really like. And this is just a fun spread for day 16. Day 17, I was really short on time, so I did this in 5 minutes, again playing around with that limited colour palette. And day 18, as I mentioned in that video where I was recapping my daily drawing challenge, I didn't have time, and so I left it as kind of a reminder that it's okay if you don't have time to fit in art or you don't make time for it. So I was going to come back and fill it in, but I just haven't. Maybe that was a later day. Day 20 it was. I meant to come back and fill it in, but I didn't. Because this is day 18. This was done on the drawing session on Patreon, so there's a replay if you want to see how these were created. Again, with brush pen first and then coloured pencil on top. Just having a lot of fun playing with texture and line work here, especially in the bushes. Again, a landscape with line only. I spent 15 minutes on this one. Again, so different to what I usually do, and also a different colour palette. I really like this colour palette, so I think it is helpful for me to put down these little blocks of colour. It is just for aesthetic reasons, but I think for this one it's quite useful because it is different to my usual, so I can come back and reference this later on. Another spread reference from Morten Hilmer's live stream. This was the first time an otter had visited, so I wanted to get him in there. It's a little bit lost in terms of all the other mark making on this page, but I enjoyed just using that one pencil, and there is also some grey brush pen that I laid down first before coming in on top. I really like the way I've drawn the trees here. Some more birds. These are wheat ears. I really enjoy drawing birds, so this was done with brush pens and then just the dark indigo on top. Again, using my line work to try and define the birds and add on the details. This one was quite a quick one. Day 23 and 24, some much softer scenes here. I really love these. I really like how the Neocolor, the white Neocolor I've added on top, softens a lot of the mark making, and I really love the colours here in these trees. It was nice to do some snowy scenes as well, because usually I'm so used to such green and verdant landscapes, so it was nice to push myself there a little bit too. A very painty spread. This was acrylic paint, drawing some foxes. I think this was a reference from Emma Carlisle's Patreon. I really enjoyed just mark making here, and this influenced our theme for the month of February on Patreon, which was texture. So I love some of these really rough textures in the sky, and then coming in on top with some of this line work with my pencils. I really like that, and also the contrast with the orange and the blues and purples. Some more play with line work. I was using my Darwin Inktense pencils and dipping them in water to create this really rough line. Some very quick studies of butterflies, moths and flowers, but I do quite like this spread. And a spread with some ducks on. This was done with acrylic markers, so I put down the shape first and came in. As you can see, I put down the shape which wasn't quite accurate, so coming in with the pencils afterwards I could neaten up the shape of that head and make it seem a bit more realistic. But you can see where I put down those shapes first, and I think that does add a kind of interest to this page. Day 28, this was done with acrylic markers again. I really love using acrylic markers when I don't have much time because it's such a quick way to put down a huge amount of colour. So I put down a mix of Liquitex, Molotow and Montana markers, and then came in on top with coloured pencils and a bit of Neocolor as well. This is definitely artwork that I want to continue making in this style, so hopefully something I can come back to when I get a bit more time. So you can really see the difference in atmosphere from something like this and then this one. I absolutely love doing my blob panels. You'll have seen that a few times on my channel, and using my beige Posca as my base layer. So that's what I did for these shapes, and then I came in on top just with some brush pens and coloured pencils to draw these scenes that I'd seen whilst on a walk. So I took photos and then I came back and drew them here in this sketchbook. And then it was 31 days in January. The last day I did these really quick brush pen studies. You'll see that I love doing wildflower studies. I mentioned that in last week's video where I shared some ideas for filling your sketchbook, but I love them. I put down the shapes first and came in again with the outlines of the pencils. I just really like the looseness on this spread. I think that comes from adding the line on after. And again, I like the colours. Okay, these ones are a bit more experimental. I usually do these in my other sketchbook, but they made it into here. This was when I was first experimenting with my gel plate, so I really didn't know what I was doing, and my preferred way to learn is to learn by doing. So I did quite a lot of practice and I recorded some of my experiments, whether they failed or were successful, on my Patreon. So this was playing with like stenciling, some really interesting textures here, and this was a bit of a mess really, but it was still helpful to learn that totally new medium for me. Another one where I've just printed with my gel plate on here to create some of this texture. As I said, it was texture month. A lot of my other work for that is in other sketchbooks, but it was really interesting to learn that. And this was part of the texture live stream that I did for my patrons that month. I love these. I'm really happy with this baby armadillo. We were playing with stamping and different ways to create lots of texture. So there's some Inktense blocks applied on the page, stamping with like a pen lid and packaging and bubble wrap to create these circles here, and just playing around with the fur of animals and just seeing what marks we could create. This was from an Emma Carlisle session on her Patreon, so a replay I did. I spent about 20 minutes on this one. I enjoyed doing some composition sketches first, so these thumbnails down the side, and then using my acrylic markers to create this scene. I'm really happy with this spread. It's very loose and I feel like there's a lot of energy in this mark making. Plus, I really enjoyed using the purple. Like I said at the beginning, it's not a colour I use often, but this sort of kick-started a love for me and I'm trying to include it a little bit more in my landscapes. Okay, a bit of observational drawing here. So this was leading on to our Drawing from Life month on Patreon. We had some workmen here digging up the street outside our house for about 3 weeks. So they were putting in new lines for some fibre optic broadband, and it was just on and on and on. And I had this orange barrier outside my studio window for months and months. Actually, I'm totally exaggerating. It was 3 weeks. But it felt like ages, and so I just decided to draw what I could see. Most of the time I do use photos and reference from books and things, but it was nice to really practice my observational drawing for that month, and this kick-started that off. Another one where I was playing with the texture, so this is actually collage. I created this with acrylic and then a sponge, which I dabbed on top to create this pattern for the armadillo shell, and then the background is done with acrylic markers. I just love the playfulness of this. Obviously it is very different to usual, but I really enjoy using collage, and again, it's nice to step out my comfort zone. This was drawn whilst on location, so this was drawn on a walk. I'll pop some pictures on screen of me drawing. I went with my sister and I pre-prepped my pages. And I used watercolour for that, so the blobs of green and pink you see in the background were done pre-walk, and that meant I didn't spend ages whilst on the walk drawing this. I just took a couple of pencils and my dark green acrylic marker, and then I could draw this while standing up and just in the middle of our walk. Luckily, my sister's very patient, but it took me maybe 5 minutes per drawing, so a really quick way to create a spread in your sketchbook by pre-doing your pages and your backgrounds and then adding on top. I also really like the combination of the pink and the green here. I think this was part of a haul on YouTube. I filmed restocking my favourite supplies, so I did film this one. It's not my favourite, it doesn't feel very me. It's definitely not got a lot of the darker tone greens I like, but it was nice to play around with my materials, getting this new monitor and testing that out, and whenever I do get new art supplies I'd like to use them straight away if I can. This definitely ticked that box. Another one drawn on location. This was plein air at a nature reserve which has these really big lakes. So I filmed this one. This was when I filled my gouache palette, which you can see over here. I need to do an update with that one because they have started to crack. But this was when I first filled that up and then I took it on location to paint with. So I like this one. It's definitely got that sort of grey, moody vibes, which it definitely was an overcast day. But I like some of these scenes and I always find I remember things better. So this definitely takes me back to that day, and I love this pop of red from that sign. This was painted with gouache and there's some Inktense here. There's also some pan pastel. I was comparing the Royal Talens, so this is the ivory paged version, but they also have a white page version. So I'll link that video because I compared the two and just to see if the paper quality was the same and what the colours looked like on the pages. So I did 2 landscapes and this was one of them. I really like this. It gives me such nice vibes. It feels very peaceful and I love some of the textures here as well. This one I haven't shared anywhere. This was actually drawn with my niece. Again, I pre-prepped my page with some watercolour and then we went to my parents' house for a family occasion and we sat just by ourselves to do some drawing, and I really enjoyed drawing with her. I was just looking outside and saw my parents' beautiful garden again, so I did the tulips, and I'm not really sure what this is. I think I was just inspired by some of the shapes I saw. So I tried to do sort of negative space here and I coloured in around it. So the colours here are the actual background layer, the base layer I put down first, and added some of these circular shapes on top because I did take a couple of markers. So just an interesting exercise there, and it was nice to draw with my niece. This was drawn on a Sarah Dyer replay, so from Sarah's Patreon. Very, very different for me. When I did this, I wasn't sure if I liked it. I like it a little bit more now, but you can see that the textures are a lot softer than I usually do, and it's certainly not a topic I normally draw either. There's some very questionable Mickey Mouses down here, but it was nice. Again, it's nice to try different things, whether they're successful or not. I think it always pushes us as artists. Okay, we are in May now, so I think I did this maybe in April, and I mostly filled my Japan sketchbook during that month, and then this was in May. So these were 10 minutes and 15 minutes. Again, playing with my gel plate, I put down this block of colour first. This was done on a replay of TJ Marston's Patreon and working with night scenes. So I used coloured pencils and Neocolours on top of the dark layer I'd put down. And I'm really happy with these. It was really fun. We're actually going to do a lot more night scenes in July for our theme, so I'm looking forward to playing with this a bit more. And I just really like the contrast. I'm really happy with some of these colours. This was actually chosen for our exclusive print on Patreon for June as well, so it's really nice that so many people love these as much as I did. So our Patreon theme for June is fast versus slow. So this was done very, very quickly on a live stream where I was playing with timers. So we did these very quick warm-ups. As you can see, they were very messy. They were only done in 1 minute, and I really limited my supply. So I had this light grey, this sort of soft bluey lilac, and then my dark indigo on top. And I used a website which was recommended to me by a patron where it changes the view every minute of different parks around the world. And it was really fun to not pick the view and be given a really limited timer to draw them. So it was frantic and quick, but it was a really nice way to warm up. And then I co-hosted a session with my friend TJ. So this is from TJ's Patreon, and we've become really close friends thanks to our relationship on Patreon. And so we co-hosted a session as part of TJ's first anniversary on that platform. And we drew very, very quickly again. I think these were 2-minute warm-ups. We used Map Crunch, which I absolutely love. It's a random generator for Google Maps. So again, we played the game where it was kind of like you stick with the scene or you gamble and then you have to draw the next one. So these are scenes that I wouldn't normally pick, especially this one. These are supposed to be workers here with their like high vis on with a city view in the background. But it was really fun to do and a very different change of pace because you have to work so quickly and really make decisions. I think it would have been easier if I had limited my colour palette like I did with these the week before. But it was fun to try, and it was just a very fun and frantic session. I really recommend watching the replay if you want to loosen up and just basically hang out with a bunch of artists going absolutely wild with their art supplies. Down here, that's supposed to be a dog, so very questionable things happened on that session, but it was really fun. A lot of my other drawings from that session are in other sketchbooks, but I really enjoy it. I look back on this very fondly, so really nice to just use my brush pens and just draw with friends. And then here we are, this is halfway. So this was drawn with my fountain pen. This is the Sailor Food de Manon fountain pen. I have a video on my channel doing some urban sketching where I was using it for the first time, and I'm absolutely in love with that pen. I wanted to see how it worked with nature studies. So this was a warm-up spread before I then did my Patreon originals for June. And I really like how it turned out. I enjoy drawing flowers. It felt very natural for me to draw in this way. And then once I'd done the outlines, I coloured it in with my Neocolors. So quite a simple spread, but I think it's really effective. And I feel like I'll definitely be doing more experiments like this with that fountain pen in the future. And that's it. So we've got all these pages to fill and the second half to come. I'm hoping in the summer I'll be able to fill this a bit more regularly when I've got a few less deadlines. But as I say, I have been creating in other sketchbooks too. So I hope this has been inspiring. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. Hopefully it's given you a few more ideas for how to fill things and seeing how my style changes as well. So I really encourage you to just play and have fun with your art supplies. A huge thank you to my patrons for their support. Without them, I wouldn't be able to create these weekly videos here on YouTube, so a big thanks to them, and a thank you to you for watching. Let me know if you have a favourite spread down below in the comments, but I hope you have a creative week, and I will see you next Sunday in my new YouTube video. See you later!